I felt the shock before I even understood what had happened. The glass had been full a second earlier, beads of condensation sliding down the sides as if the water itself were trying to escape what was about to come. Then, without warning, Vivian's hand jerked, her arm swung, and the entire icy contents splashed across my face. It hit me like winter cracking through a window pane, sharp enough to steal my breath, and cold enough to turn the room into a blur of gasps, clinking silverware, and the metallic scent of humiliation. I remember blinking, drops sliding down my cheeks as though the water had turned to 1,000 tiny needles. And I remember the room falling silent, suffocatingly silent, except for Bradley's half-drunk chuckle dissolving awkwardly when he realized no one else was laughing. For a moment, I could not move. My skin felt like glass, thin and fragile, and my fingertips trembled in my lap. Vivian's voice sliced through that stillness. "Mother," she said, with a sneer so sharp it could have cut through bone, "please do not embarrass me in front of our guests. You do not know how to behave." Those words landed harder than the water. They were the kind of words that echo even after the room empties, the kind that settle into the softest part of your chest and claw their way outward. And as I sat there, drenched, 70 years old, widowed, exhausted, loved by no one in that house, I felt a terrible stillness bloom inside me. It was the stillness of clarity, a quietness I had not known. I still have one. If you are relating to this story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I lifted my napkin to dab at my face, but the thin fabric was instantly wet, useless against the icy rivulets running down my neck. Vivian was already laughing again, a brittle, forced sound, trying to pretend her outburst had been nothing more than a moment of irritation. She touched Bradley's arm and smiled for the table, her eyes darting to each guest as if daring them to disagree. "Let us continue," she said. "Mother is fine." But I was not fine. The water had been cold, yes, but the deeper chill came from something far older, far heavier. The realization that I had allowed myself to decay into the background of her life, to fade into nothing more than a convenient wallet and an unwanted ornament. In that moment, I understood what I had been denying for so long. My daughter did not respect me. She did not even like me. She tolerated me only because I paid her bills. As the conversations resumed, thin and nervously cheerful, I stared at my plate. My tiny portion of food sat there like a symbol of how small they had made me. Vivian had always insisted she cared for my health, but the truth was simpler. She did not want me consuming too much of anything she considered hers. I had bought them this house, once upon a time. Thomas and I had surprised them with it as a wedding gift, glowing with pride the way parents do when they believe they are shaping a bright future for their child. We signed the papers with excitement. I remember Thomas squeezing my hand and whispering, "She will always know how loved she is." But she had forgotten. Or she had never understood love unless it came wrapped in a credit card receipt. As the dinner dragged on, I felt the coldness beneath my clothing, like a second skin. My body shivered, but the humiliation burned from within, a hot coal lodged behind my ribs. Every time I opened my mouth, I heard myself echoing Thomas's old warnings from years before he passed. "Chrissy, she is spoiled," he had said more than once. "You cannot say yes forever. She will come to expect it." I had brushed him off. Vivian had been our only child, and I had wanted her to have everything. A full plate, good opportunities, a stable home, a sense of abundance. What mother does not want that? But abundance had soured into entitlement. Stability had turned into dominance, and love had slowly been replaced by obligation. When dinner finally ended, I excused myself and retreated to the small guest room where I slept. It was barely larger than a storage closet, with a narrow bed and a single dresser whose drawers stuck every time I tried to open them. I sat on the edge of the mattress and stared at my hands, remembering how Thomas used to hold them when they shook like this. I had not realized until that moment how deeply I missed being treated as someone worthy. I could still hear the laughter echoing from downstairs, the rhythm of Vivian's voice rising louder again now that she had reestablished control of the room. Every laugh sounded like a dismissal. Every clink of a glass sounded like a reminder that I no longer belonged anywhere in that house. I thought of my own home, my little 2-bedroom place on the edge of town, The home where Thomas and I had spent our last years together before he got sick. We had planted flowers in the yard, chosen curtains together, debated over where to place the grandfather clock. When he died, the silence of that place had felt unbearable. I could not sit in those rooms without hearing his voice in every hallway. So I rented it out to a local company, telling myself I needed a fresh start with Vivian. But now I saw the truth. I had not needed her home. I had needed comfort. I had needed family. And she had used that vulnerability as leverage. I looked at myself in the mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. My hair was damp, tendrils clinging to my cheeks like wilted vines. My eyes looked emptier than I had ever seen them. I had become a ghost in my own life. "How did I get here?" I whispered. It was not a rhetorical question. It was the kind of question that demands honesty, and honesty often hurts. The answer came slowly. I had gotten here one small compromise at a time. One belittling comment accepted in silence. One unnecessary expense paid without complaint. One boundary shifted and then another. A lifetime of being gentle had turned into a habit of being erased. I stood and wiped my face again, as if removing the water for the second time would undo what had happened. But nothing could undo it. Something had broken. Something precious. Something that had already been cracking for years, but had finally shattered. I walked downstairs, quiet enough that no one noticed me standing near the bottom of the staircase. Vivian's voice floated from the dining area. "She is so dramatic," she was saying. "Honestly, she needs to learn how to act in public. My friends were just being polite. Did you see the way she stared at me? Like I had done something wrong." The laughter that followed was like a knife. Not because of their harshness, but because of the certainty with which she said it, as though what she had done was normal, expected, reasonable. That was when clarity took its full shape, not as rage, not as vengeance, but as simple understanding. I did not belong in this house. I did not deserve this treatment, and I did not need to accept it anymore. I returned to the small room, closed the door, and sat on the bed. I stayed there for a long time, long after the guests had left and the house had grown quiet again. Vivian knocked once, half-heartedly, then walked away without waiting for a response. She did not apologize. She did not check on me. She did not care. The silence of the night grew so heavy it felt like a blanket pressing down on my chest. But beneath that weight, something else stirred. Something warm, faint, and long forgotten. It was self-respect, rising like an ember in the ashes. I picked up my phone. My hands still trembled, but not from humiliation anymore. This time, it was anticipation. I opened the old contact for the company renting my home. My thumb hovered over the call button for a moment. Then, with a breath steady enough to surprise even me, I pressed it. The phone rang twice. "Hello? This is Karen. How may I help you?" "Hello, dear," I said, and my voice sounded strangely firm. "This is Christina. I need to terminate the rental agreement. I'm coming home." There was a pause on the other end. "Of course," she said warmly. "We can process that right away. When would you like to return?" "Immediately," I said, without hesitation. "Tonight, if possible." And as I ended the call, a quiet strength settled into me like the first warmth of spring creeping through the soil. I realized I had not felt this alive in years. For the rest of the night, I packed my things with a calmness that felt almost otherworldly. Every folded blouse, every pair of socks, every tiny object I owned felt like a piece of myself I was reclaiming. I packed slowly, methodically, as if preparing for a new life, which, in a way, I was. When morning came, I carried my single suitcase to the front door. Vivian was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, too absorbed to notice me at first. When she finally looked up, her expression twisted in surprise. "Mother, where are you going?" "Home," I said simply. Her eyes narrowed. "You are overreacting. You always overreact." I let her words float past me like dust. They no longer had weight. They no longer had power. I stepped outside before she could say another word, closed the door behind me, and felt the morning air wrap around me like freedom. For the first time in years, I belonged to myself again, and I had no idea yet just how much my life was about to change. The taxi ride back to my house felt longer than it really was. The city rolled by in gray and beige streaks, buildings smudged against the morning light like half-finished paintings. I watched it all through the window as if it belonged to another life, another woman. The driver tried to make small talk, but my answers came out distant and automatic. My mind was not on the road. It was still back in that dining room, with ice water running down my face and my daughter's voice ringing in my ears, telling me I did not know how to behave. Somewhere between one traffic light and the next, my body started to shake. Not from cold this time, but from the delayed shock. The humiliation came back in a wave, hot and dizzying. My fingers clenched around my purse until my knuckles went white, and I had to remind myself to breathe. It was strange, feeling two things at once. The grief of a mother who had just realized how little she mattered to her own child, and the quiet, steady pride of a woman who had finally walked away. Those feelings fought each other in my chest like two storms colliding. If you are relating to this story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. When the taxi turned onto my old street, I pressed my hand against the window. The sight of my house, my real house, caused something to twist inside me. The little garden in front was wilder than I remembered, the rose bushes slightly overgrown, the lawn needing trimming. But the front steps were the same. The door was the same color Thomas had chosen. That deep, warm blue, he said, reminded him of summer skies. I paid the driver, pulled my suitcase onto the curb, and stood there for a moment, just looking. The key felt heavy in my pocket, like something sacred. When I finally slipped it into the lock and turned it, there was a soft resistance, then a quiet click that sounded almost like a sigh. I stepped inside. The air smelled different, faintly like coffee and cleaning products, with none of the familiar traces of our old life. The company had kept it neat, neutral, bland. The furniture we had owned was gone, replaced by simple rental pieces, practical but without soul. Still, beneath that layer of newness, I felt the bones of the place, the shape of the walls, the echo of footsteps that no one else would recognize as mine. I walked slowly from room to room, the living room, bare except for a plain sofa and a coffee table. The kitchen, with its cold countertops and an empty fruit bowl. The hallway where Thomas once bumped his shoulder on purpose, over and over, pretending to injure himself just to make me laugh. My bedroom, now stripped of personality, with white sheets and a single frame print of some generic landscape. Tears rose before I could stop them. I sat on the edge of the bed and held my face in my hands, one part of me wanting to collapse and another part whispering, "Not now. Not yet. You came back. That means something." I called the company again to confirm the move-out schedule. They had already relocated their staff to alternative housing and assured me the space was mine by the end of the week. Because of the contract, they would vacate the furniture too. I listened to their polite words and nodded, even though they could not see me. When the call ended, I sat in the silence a long time. The house hummed softly around me, empty but not hostile, like a room waiting patiently for someone to breathe. Then, practical thoughts began to surface. Money, bills, my accounts. Vivian. The realization hit me that almost every monthly payment she depended on, the utilities, part of the mortgage they had refinanced, the credit card she used for her impulsive spending, was connected to me, to my name, to my willingness. I had spent so long paying out of habit that I had stopped thinking about what those habits were doing to me. I had become a human autopay, a silent system in the background. Not anymore. I pulled out my notebook, the same one I used for grocery lists and reminders. I drew a line down the middle of the page. On one side I wrote, what I pay for them. On the other, what I need for me. The first column filled quickly. Mortgage top-up, electric bill, gas, internet. Their emergency credit card that seemed to experience emergencies in the form of restaurant charges and designer shoes. It was like listing my own quiet disappearances. When I finished, the list looked obscene. On the second column, I paused. What did I need for me? The question felt almost foreign. I had lived so long, thinking in terms of what everyone else required, that my own needs were a blurry outline. I wrote slowly: medication, groceries, utilities, a little money for hobbies, savings for unexpected repairs, perhaps, if I dared to dream, a trip somewhere new one day. As I stared at the page, a small bitter laugh escaped me. How had I let it go this far? How had a woman who once ran a household, raised a child, and navigated the world with some competence become this invisible? I called the bank first. I explained calmly that I wanted to remove my name from certain automatic transfers to my daughter's accounts. The employee asked twice, "Are you sure?" As if I were about to make a terrible mistake. Each time I answered, "Yes, I am sure." With every confirmation click, every "all right" that has been updated, I felt lighter. Then I called the utility companies. One by one, I stepped out of the invisible web I had woven around Vivian's life. It took hours. My throat grew dry, my shoulders ached. But when I was done, the list on the left side of my notebook had been slashed with red lines. The list on the right side looked possible, sustainable, mine. The first call from Vivian came that evening. "Mother?" Her voice was sharp, almost shrill. "The mortgage payment did not go through. What is going on?" "I stopped paying it," I said. My own calm surprised me. "That house is yours, Vivian. You and Bradley are responsible for it." There was a pause. I could hear her breathing. Then, incredulously, "You cannot just do that. We depend on that money. You know how things are." I almost said, "I know exactly how things are." But instead, I said, "You threw water in my face and humiliated me in front of your guests." "Oh, for heaven's sake," she snapped. "You are still on about that? It was just water. You were making a scene. I had to do something. You always act like such a victim." The old me would have shrunk. I would have apologized, even without understanding why. I would have told myself she was stressed, that she did not mean it, that it was my duty as a mother to smooth things over. The new me stayed silent. "Are you listening?" she demanded. "I am listening," I said softly, "and I am done paying for the life you chose to live. You are an adult. You wanted your independence. Now you have it. Fully. You are going to regret this." Her voice dropped into a cold, dangerous tone. "You will end up alone, Mother. Completely alone. Do you understand? When you need help, do not come crying to us." I thought of the empty house around me, the echo of my footsteps, the ghost of Thomas's laughter somewhere down the hallway. Yes, I was alone in that moment. But the loneliness I had felt in her house, sitting at her table like an unwanted guest, had been far worse. "If that is how it has to be," I said, "then so be it." She hung up without saying goodbye. The quiet that followed felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Terrifying. Exhilarating. In the days that followed, my emotions swung wildly. Some mornings, I woke up with a sense of fierce pride. I brewed my coffee, opened the windows, and walked barefoot across the floor of the house that belonged to me. Mine. The word tasted good. Other mornings, doubt crept in. I would stand in the kitchen, aware of the silence, and hear Vivian's voice in my head, "You will end up alone." Guilt wrapped itself around my heart like ivy, whispering that I had abandoned my daughter, that I had perhaps gone too far. Mothers are supposed to sacrifice. Mothers are supposed to forgive. But where was the line between forgiveness and self-destruction? I did not know, and the not knowing kept me awake at night. One particularly restless night, I lay staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. The grief for Thomas, the disappointment in Vivian, the fear of aging without support. My chest felt tight, my thoughts circling like vultures. I realized I could not untangle all this alone. The next morning, I called a local clinic and asked for a referral. By the end of the day, I had an appointment with a therapist named Dr. Raymond. I almost canceled twice out of habit. Old habits run deep, especially the ones that tell you your pain is not important enough to take up someone else's time. But something steadier guided my hand as I got ready and left the house. The waiting room was small and softly lit. A pot plant drooped in the corner, valiantly trying to survive. Soft instrumental music played through hidden speakers. I sat in a chair that was too modern for my taste and clasped my hands in my lap like a nervous schoolgirl waiting to be graded. When my name was called, I stood on slightly shaky legs and followed the receptionist's gesture. The office was simple, with a wooden desk, 2 armchairs, and a bookshelf lined with titles about trauma, grief, and boundaries. The man who stood to greet me had kind eyes and a calm presence, the kind of presence that made the room feel safer without him even saying a word. "Christina?" he asked. "Yes." "I am Raymond. Please have a seat." I sat. The chair was soft in a way that made me feel slightly off balance, as if it was encouraging me to relax when I was not sure I knew how anymore. "So," he said gently, once we were both settled, "how can I help you today?" No one had asked me that in a very long time. Not truly. Not without an agenda. The words tumbled out before I could organize them. My daughter threw a glass of water in my face because I asked for more food. I saw his eyebrows lift slightly, not in judgment but in concern. And that, I added quietly, was not even the worst part. Over the next sessions, I poured out everything: the financial support that had turned into invisible chains, the tiny criticisms that had cut me daily, the way Bradley joked about me being outdated, like I was an old appliance they had kept out of obligation, the fear of losing Vivian, the fear of losing myself, the unbearable sense of being unnecessary and inconvenient. I talked about Thomas too, about his death and the way my grief had left an empty space that I had tried to fill with my daughter's approval. I admitted things I had never said out loud, that I had felt guilty for not standing up to Vivian sooner, that I had let my guilt dictate my choices, that I had doubted my own worth for so long that I forgot how to recognize it. Dr. Raymond listened. Sometimes he asked questions that felt like lanterns in a dark corridor, lighting corners I had tried not to look at. Sometimes he simply let me sit in silence until I found the next piece of the story. At one point, he said, "Christina, when did you first learn that your needs were less important than everyone else's?" The question stunned me. I thought of my childhood, my parents, the way I had always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over, the one who fixed, who soothed, who apologized. I realized that I had not just become this way for Vivian. I had always been this way. She had simply taken advantage of a pattern that already existed. In one session, when I hesitated to call what I had experienced abuse, he leaned forward slightly, his voice gentle but firm. "Dismissal, ridicule, financial exploitation, and public humiliation," he said. "If I told you a stranger had experienced all that from their child, what word would you use?" "Cruel," I whispered. "And yet you struggle to use that word for yourself." Tears rolled down my cheeks. "Because she is my daughter." "And you are her mother," he replied. "Not her servant, not her bank, not her emotional punching bag." Those words lodged themselves somewhere deep inside. Not her bank. I had said something similar to myself weeks earlier, but hearing it from someone else turned it into a truth I could not easily dismiss. Therapy did not magically fix everything, but slowly it helped me reframe my story. I stopped asking, "What did I do wrong as a mother?" and started asking, "What have I allowed because I thought I did not deserve more?" It was a painful shift, but a necessary one. Meanwhile, life outside those sessions moved forward. The rental company removed their furniture, leaving the house echoing and bare. With the little savings I had kept hidden from Vivian, I bought pieces that felt like me. A secondhand sofa with floral upholstery, a sturdy wooden dining table that reminded me of the one my mother had owned. Soft curtains in a warm color, a bookshelf. As the rooms filled, so did a part of me. Each object was not just a thing, it was a statement. I live here. I exist. I matter. One afternoon, while browsing online for ways to occupy my time, I stumbled upon a community center's website. They offered various courses for adults and seniors: painting, computer basics, dancing, language lessons. My eyes lingered on one listing: sewing and creative alterations, beginners welcome. I had sewn when I was younger. Simple things: hemming pants, mending small tears, making curtains. Thomas used to tease that I could make a tablecloth look glamorous. The idea of sharpening that skill again stirred a little flutter in my chest. I enrolled. On the first day of class, I nearly turned back at the door. The room buzzed with chatter. Long tables were lined with sewing machines. Fabric in all colors and patterns spilled out of baskets like captured rainbows. Women of different ages sat together, laughing, adjusting their chairs, placing their bags down with the ease of people who already belonged. I felt awkward, holding my purse like a shield, but the instructor greeted me with a bright smile and showed me to a seat. That was how I met Cynthia and Samantha. Cynthia sat to my left, a woman in her early 60s with silver-streaked hair, twisted into a loose bun and bright, curious eyes. She introduced herself with an energy that felt like sunshine. "I am terrible at sewing," she confessed cheerfully. "But I am excellent at laughing at myself, so I figured I qualify." Samantha sat on my right, a little younger than Cynthia, quiet at first, with carefully painted nails and a thoughtful gaze. She listened more than she spoke initially, but when she did speak, there was a dry humor in her words that caught me off guard and made me smile. We fumbled with fabric and needles together. Cynthia's first attempt at a straight line looked like a drunken path. and she burst out laughing so hard that I could not help but join in. Samantha rolled her eyes affectionately and said, "If that is fashion, then I am a supermodel." Her tone was so deadpan, I nearly choked. Slowly, week by week, those two women became more than classmates. They became companions. After class, we started going for coffee. At first, we talked about simple things, what we planned to sew, the little mistakes we made in class, recipes, weather. But eventually, the conversations deepened. It is funny how, when you finally find a safe place, the truths you have been holding in for years begin to spill out. One afternoon, as we sat at a cafe table by the window, Cynthia mentioned her son. He stopped talking to me for nearly 3 years after I refused to sell my apartment to help him invest in some ridiculous business, she said, stirring her tea with unnecessary force. He called me selfish, me, after everything. Samantha nodded slowly. My sister only remembers I exist when she needs a babysitter or money for her latest crisis. If I dare to say no, she tells me I am not family-oriented enough. The words broke something open in me. I found myself saying, "My daughter threw a glass of cold water in my face because I asked for more food at her dinner table." Both women fell silent. Their eyes met mine, full of shock and something else, something I had been starving for. Genuine empathy. Cynthia reached out and touched my wrist. "That is not just rude," she said softly. "That is cruel." Samantha's voice was quiet but firm. "You did not deserve that. Not ever." A lump formed in my throat. I nodded, swallowing hard. We talked for hours, sharing stories of boundaries crossed, kindness abused, guilt wielded like a weapon. It felt like entering a secret club I had never known existed. The club of women who had been too kind for too long and were finally learning to choose themselves. Over time, the sewing class stopped being about sewing. It became about reclaiming pieces of ourselves we had misplaced. Yes, we learned to hem and alter and create, but more than that, we learned to stitch our identities back together. It was at one of the community center's small social events that I met David. He was standing near the punch bowl, looking slightly out of place in a checked shirt and well-worn jeans, holding a flimsy paper cup like it might disintegrate if he gripped it too tightly. His hair was more gray than dark, and he wore glasses that gave him a scholarly air, even though I later learned he had worked most of his life as a mechanic. We struck up a conversation almost by accident. I made a remark about the pastries being too dry. He laughed and admitted he had only taken one because he did not know what else to do with his hands. There was an awkwardness to him that felt oddly comforting, like a reminder that I was not the only one learning how to exist in a new phase of life. As we talked, I realized something startling. He listened, really listened. Not the way some people do, just waiting for their turn to speak, but with genuine interest. He asked questions about my sewing, about my house, about the garden I wanted to revive. He spoke of his late wife with tenderness, of his grown children who lived in other cities, of his efforts to figure out who he was now, that he was no longer defined solely as husband or father. There was a gentleness in him that did not feel weak, only steady. At first, I kept my guard up. I enjoyed his company, but a part of me was wary. I had opened my heart to my daughter my entire life and watched her step on it with muddy shoes. The idea of letting someone new in felt risky. But David never rushed me. He never demanded more than I was willing to give. If I canceled our coffee plans because I felt overwhelmed, he did not guilt me. He simply said, "I understand. We can try again another day." If I shared something painful, he did not offer empty platitudes. He simply sat with it as if holding it carefully between us. Little by little, I found myself looking forward to seeing him. A message on my phone, a shared joke about the community center's terrible coffee, a walk in the park where our steps fell into an easy rhythm. For the first time in years, I began to experience something I had almost forgotten existed: tenderness that did not cost me my dignity. Life settled into a new shape. Mornings in my own kitchen with sunlight spilling onto the table. Afternoons in therapy where I learned to name my feelings without judging them. Evenings sewing or reading, or sometimes simply sitting in silence without feeling like that silence meant I was unlovable. Coffee dates with Cynthia and Samantha, full of laughter and the kind of honesty that only comes from shared scars. Slow walks and tentative plans with David. Vivian called a few more times in the early months, each call angrier than the last. She raged about the bills, about the debts piling up, about how unfair I was being. She said I was abandoning her. She said I was choosing strangers over family. She reminded me of every favor I had ever done for myself, framing it as evidence of my supposed selfishness. Each time I listened. Each time I grieved a little more. And each time I held my boundary. I told her calmly that I loved her, but I would not finance her lifestyle anymore. I suggested she speak to a financial advisor. I told her I hoped she would learn from this. Eventually, the calls stopped. Silence replaced her anger. Years of it. If you had told me back then that 5 years would pass without a word from my daughter, I would have been terrified. But in that unfolding stretch of time, something remarkable happened. The woman I had been, the one who trembled at every criticism, who believed her worth depended on what she could give, slowly faded. And in her place, someone new emerged. Someone who knew, finally, that being a mother did not mean setting herself on fire to keep everyone else warm. 5 years. That was how long the silence lasted. 5 years in which I learned the strange rhythm of a life rebuilt from the inside out. 5 years in which birthdays came and went without a call, holidays passed without a single forwarded message, and the space once shaped like my daughter grew into something I learned to live around. I will not lie and pretend those years were painless. They were not. Some nights, when the house creaked and the wind pressed against the old windows, I felt that familiar tug of longing. She was still my daughter. Blood may not dictate love, but blood remembers history. And my history with Vivian was a tapestry woven with moments of joy once too beautiful to dismiss completely. But there is a strange thing that happens when you spend enough time in your own company. You begin to see yourself more clearly, not as the role others assigned you, but as someone with worth independent of what you can offer. Therapy helped me understand that grief and peace can coexist. Friendship helped me realize that family is sometimes chosen. And David helped me feel alive again in ways I had not expected at my age. He was never the center of my world, but he became a steady presence in it, like the quiet glow of a Savoine. Then one afternoon, as sunlight spilled across my living room floor, staining the wood in soft gold, everything shifted again. I was watering my plants, the ones I had started over the years, each one a small rebellion against the fear that I could not nurture anything anymore. When the doorbell rang, I assumed it was Samantha dropping off the fabric she had borrowed, or Cynthia bringing one of her lopsided cakes that I always pretended were perfect. But when I opened the door, I found myself staring into a pair of eyes I knew better than my own. Vivian. Except not quite the Vivian I remembered. Her face looked thinner, not in the glamorous way she had always pursued, but in the weary way that comes from too many disappointments. Her hair was tied back with none of the usual care. Her clothes were simple, practical, worn at the elbows. And her eyes, those sharp, calculating eyes that once scanned the world for opportunities, held something I had never seen in her before. Remorse. "Mother," she said, her voice cracking on the first syllable. Can I come in?" My first instinct was not anger. It was caution, the kind you learn after burning your hand not once but 100 times. But beneath that caution, something softer stirred, something small but undeniable. The memory of the little girl who used to run to me with scraped knees, asking me to blow on the sting. I stepped aside. She entered slowly, as if the house itself might judge her. Her gaze drifted across the room, settling on the curtains I had chosen, the living room arrangement, the photographs on the wall, particularly one of me standing between Cynthia and Samantha at our sewing class showcase. "You made new friends," she said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "And," her voice hesitated, "you seem different." "I am," I admitted. "I had to be." She nodded, swallowing hard. She sat at the dining table the same table where Thomas and I had shared so many Sunday breakfasts. I joined her, my hands folded in my lap. There was a long silence. Then she said, "Mother, I came to apologize." I waited. "I was awful to you." Her voice trembled. "I was cruel. I was entitled. I was not the daughter you deserved." The words landed softly, like leaves drifting to the ground, unexpected, fragile, painful in their honesty. For years, I had rehearsed what I might say if this moment ever came. I had imagined anger, Accusations, long speeches about pain and dignity and betrayal, but when the moment finally arrived, none of those scripts felt right. Instead, I asked gently, "What changed?" She looked down at her hands. "Life did," she murmured. "Bradley and I divorced. The debts, the spending, it caught up with us. He blamed me for everything. I blamed him for everything. And then, when I was alone, I realized something." She lifted her eyes toward me. I realized I had become a woman who treated her own mother worse than I would treat a stranger. The admission pierced through me, not out of satisfaction, but out of sadness for who she had become and for the years lost. "Mother," she whispered, "I am so sorry." I let the silence stretch, not because I wished to punish her, but because I wanted to choose my words with care. "I forgave you," I said at last. Her eyes widened. "You did?" "Yes," I said, "a long time ago, not because what you did was acceptable, but because I needed to let go in order to rebuild my life." Her breath left her in a shaky exhale. She brought a trembling hand to her cheek, wiping away tears she seemed unprepared for. I reached across the table and rested my hand on hers. She squeezed my fingers, her grip desperate, as if afraid I would disappear. "I want us to have a relationship again," she said. "I do not expect things to go back to what they were. I know trust must be rebuilt, but I want to try. I want to be better." I nodded slowly. "We can try. But Vivian, I need you to understand something very clearly." She looked up. "I am your mother," I said. "Not your bank, not your rescuer, not your financial cushion. If we build a relationship again, it must be based on love, not dependence." She nodded immediately, but I held her gaze until I saw the understanding settle in. Not just agreement, understanding. For the first time in our lives, the power between us felt balanced. I made us tea. She walked through the house with me, touching the edges of my new world with gentle fingers. She asked about my sewing class, about Cynthia and Samantha, about Dr. Raymond, about David. When I told her I was seeing someone, her eyebrows shot up. "You?" she said in surprise. "Yes," I answered. "Is he kind?" she asked. Very quietly, I said, "Yes, he is kind." And that seemed to matter to her. We spoke for nearly an hour. This time, not as a mother desperate for affection or a daughter demanding it, but as two women trying to build a bridge between their wounded pieces. When she finally stood to leave, she hugged me. Not a quick, obligatory hug, a real one. One where her shoulders shook and her tears dampened my blouse. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," I said, "and I always have." When the door closed behind her, the house felt different. Not filled with the old ache, but with something gentler. A healing beginning, not a return to the past. I walked into my garden, where the roses swayed in the soft breeze. I thought of the years I had lost, the years I had reclaimed, and the years still ahead. I no longer feared being alone. I no longer feared saying no, and I no longer feared the truth. I had survived humiliation. I had walked away from a life that diminished me. I had rebuilt myself piece by piece, with the help of people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. And now, I had opened a door to forgiveness. On my terms, not out of fear or dependency, but out of peace. To the listeners of this story, I ask you from the depths of my hard-earned clarity, what would you have done in my place? Tell me where you are listening from. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you wish to support more stories like this, you can use Super Thanks. With heartfelt greetings, until next time.